News, news, news. There has just been so much news. It's really hard for me to actually keep on top of it. So today I'd like to share with you guys a story I've been following for a while, and one that concerns me very deeply. And it has to do with the heroin epidemic that has most recently been very bad in the city of Seattle. And it also has to do with the steps that the city council would like to take in order to try to combat this heroin epidemic. Although, one of the steps in particular that they would like to take is not actually combating the heroin epidemic. If anything, it's going to make it worse. And I'm going to share with you guys my reasoning and my worries about that. But first off, I'd like to say I'm a little late to this story. I've been following it, but this is the first video I've done on it. But just briefly to summarize what my problem is with what the city council is planning on doing. Well, the city council is planning on installing so-called safe injection sites at key areas around the city. Those areas happen to be areas that coincide with a very large recent increase of homelessness, the homeless population, and also an increase of crime. But these are the places that the city council, would like to place so-called safe injection sites. Now, I'm going to explain to you my thought process behind why these sites are a terrible idea. But first, I'd like to say that I have set up a change.org petition to try and get these sites stopped. Now, I know I'm late to this, and we do have a senator working on passing a bill in Washington state that would put an end to ban to these so-called safe injection sites. So yeah, I'm a little late, but I wanted to set up this change.org petition, and I will leave a link to that in the description. But before I go on to talk about why I have a problem with these safe injection sites, let me first play a little something from our city representatives, the people who thought this was a great idea.
Executive. So obviously there's a lot to go with this. There's a whole suite of recommendations, but the most controversial is likely to be the safe drug sites, the CHELS, safe drug consumption spaces. I'd be curious to hear from the executives how boldly and urgently we're going to move forward on that.
So that is one of 8 recommendations. And while impactful, probably, as far as I can tell, the most impactful is ensuring treatment on demand. One of the things I heard from the task force when we talked earlier was making sure that treatment is available as drugs, making sure that treatment providers are there and present and engaging people just as much as the drug dealers are. That's the most important thing we can do. Now, turning to your question, if this is a strategy that saves lives, if there are people who are going to die if we do not do this, then regardless of the political discomfort, I think it is something that we have to move forward with in a really deliberate way. I believe in a medical setting, a clinical setting. I believe we can start by ensuring that there aren't going to be negative impacts to the community. And in fact, I believe that those who have studied these things will tell you there are positive impacts, because right now people are using drugs and in some cases overdosing in their homes, but not only in their homes, in public, in the doorway, in the alley, in the park, discarding needles, etc. Having them be able to be in a medical clinical setting where each time they come there's an opportunity to engage with them and get them into that treatment that is going to get them beyond addiction and give them their lives back. That is compelling. So I think if it is true, as these experts are telling us, that this is something that has genuine value that will save lives, then it is incumbent on us to figure out how do we do it in a way that eliminates any potential negative impacts and gets directly to reducing the harm in the community.
Well, that was King County Executive Dow Constantine. a man who needs to be removed from his job, not least of which because of the Sound Transit boondoggle that he helped to institute, with billions of dollars going to a practically worthless choo-choo train. Now, what he had to say, it sounded good and all, right? It's all about treatment and saving lives. The only problem is, though, these safe injection sites, well, they are not set up for treatment. In fact, all they're set up to do is enable. And that leads to my biggest problem with the safe injection sites. And that problem is related to the recent epidemic of poisoned and tainted heroin that has been making its way into Washington State and most of the US. This article from the Daily Caller: tainted batch of heroin suspected in 3 fatal Seattle overdoses. And this is from January. Although I'll point out that in 2016, there were a dozen or so fatal overdoses from similar batches of tainted heroin in the Seattle, King County area. Now, these bad batches of heroin presumably have been originating from Canada, places like that, but they have been tainted with the painkiller fentanyl, and they've been responsible for fatal overdoses. So, my biggest problem with these safe injection centers is a hypothetical. And let's put it like this. So now let's say that these injection centers get instituted. Now, the way they're set up is that they can save lives because the nurses on hand can give you an OD counter agent if you happen to OD on heroin. These centers are not set up to do any type of actual treatment or really save any lives except for the case of treating ODs. Now, hypothetically, let's say that in the future, when these centers are running, and the users who would come into this center, they bring in their own product. This is not a product that is tested or verified in any way by the safe injection site. Now, let's say that in the future, someone is to OD on a tainted heroin. Well, at that point, the city may very well determine that in order to keep these safe injection sites actually safe, they have to test and verify the product that these users are bringing in off the street. Let's take it a step further than that. Let's say people OD off an unknown tainted heroin, smack, whatever. I'm no expert on these things, but let's say they OD on one of these tainted products. Now, at what point in the future will the city look at that and say, in order to keep these safe injection sites safe, we not only need to test the product that the users are bringing in from the street, we have to go one step further than that. We actually have to supply the user with a safe drug. Now, at the point that the city decides that this is the only way to keep those safe injection sites safe, well, then the city will have turned the taxpayers into drug dealers. And I don't like that idea. There are many things not to like about these safe injection sites, but for me, the idea that the contributing active members of society should be compelled by the government to become drug dealers, well, that doesn't sit very well with me. So this is my biggest worry in the future if Seattle is to institute so-called safe injection sites. And I would like you guys all to go to change.org if you'd like and sign the petition. I'll leave the link down below. I realize my platform isn't a very large one. There are others out there on the internet who have been talking about this issue. So I'd encourage you guys to check it out. I will continue to update you on the story as I can, since the building of these sites is something like a year away. And as I said before, there are a lot of other reasons not to like this, and I found a news report from 2016 that I think will illustrate some of those reasons. If you guys see what I see, you're going to not want these kind of people in your neighborhood. And this news report is coming from Vancouver, BC, where they have the much touted safe injection site. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave you with that, and I'll see you next time.
Nearly 9 million people visit Vancouver, British Columbia every year, and this is what they see. Arguably one of the most beautiful cities in the world. But this is what they don't see. And this is who they don't meet. William Janai was coming down from a high when we ran into him on East Hastings Street.
How long have you been using?
26 years.
Heroin?
Yeah.
Other stuff too?
Yeah.
What else?
Crystal meth.
There are thousands of others like him in what's considered the poorest section of Canada. Vancouver police say 5,000 drug users live here, and 15 years ago they were dying in the streets. William almost did.
Yeah.
But now it's nurses who save him, and the overdoses happen in the only clinic in North America where he can legally shoot up. Seattle is considering something similar.
It's a space that allows people to come and use drugs in a way that's safer.
By providing clean supplies.
People often go with the cooker, need the alcohol, need a tie, put around your arm. I'll use a bit of water.
Clients take their supplies to one of 13 booths fitted with mirrors and inject themselves under the watchful eyes of healthcare professionals.
And show them sort of technique and how to do things. We don't inject anybody.
Or provide the drugs. Since opening in 2003, clinic manager Andy Day says the overdose death rate in this area has dropped 35%, and saving addicts here costs $3 million taxpayer dollars a year. Day says that's cheaper than treating them in the hospital for the drugs or diseases contracted because of the drugs.
If you were to prevent the equivalent of maybe 2 to 3 people per year from contracting HIV, you've basically covered your running costs for something like a supervised injection site of this size.
Insight can say definitively that they have reduced the number of overdose deaths due to heroin here in Vancouver. But what they can't say is if fewer people are using the drug. In fact, there may be more. They're studying it right now. They estimate between 15 and 20% of the people who utilize this clinic have come here from other parts of Canada specifically for it. As many as 900 people use the clinic daily, usually more than once.
Probably about 10 times a day.
And the booths are almost always full. We saw people injecting on the street. They told us because there's a wait to get in.
Waiting a half hour, 45 minutes is just really a long time for an addict.
Vancouver police don't arrest them. They redirect them to Insight. The idea is to get them connected to other social services. Detox, counseling, transitional living.
People that are respected.
Day says those who use Insight are 30% more likely to enter treatment. Still, he maintains that sobriety is not an option for everyone.
I understand a lot of people have a visceral reaction, which is, how could you allow people to do this? But the reality is, we have to get past the discomfort.
There's always going to be drug users, no matter what.
Do you have any goals to get clean? Because I know they got some programs they can help people too.
No.
In Vancouver, British Columbia, Joanna Small, Kairos 7 News.